Hi, I'm Donald. Thank you for watching the video. Today I'm going to be talking about a movie, because that's what I always do, and I have no life. So a while ago I said I made a post that I was deciding to do a new show called IHYM, where I take movies that you guys like or decide on, and I pretty much just rip it apart, because why not? So today's suggestion has been brought to you by Brandon Yak, and he suggested The Thing. The Thing from 1982 is actually one of my favorite movies of all time, and I mean it, and I do generally believe that it's actually one of the best movies ever made. However, the 2011 prequel of the same name is absolute garbage. The 2011 movie is actually a victim of a lot of studio interference, meaning anything that the director or the writers wanted to do, the studio itself stepped in and made changes to it. And these drastic changes pretty much made this movie into the abomination that it is. So without further ado, let me get into 2011's The Thing. The beginning shot of a movie should tell you almost everything that you need to know about it. This should introduce character arcs, it should introduce and establish the basic rules of the universe, I guess, of the story that you're telling when it comes to film. So let's just check out this first shot, and at least first scene, and see what we can expect from this film.
What have you been doing, man?
If you guessed horrible CGI in characters that we don't care about, you may be correct. So further into the movie, we're introduced into our protagonist, who's wearing headphones that didn't even exist into the 1980s. So she gets asked to join this research team out in Antarctica, and she agrees to it because why not? They have to progress the plot somehow. She meets these people on this helicopter, and they talk and they chat, and then you have the two pilots who are basically just Childs and McCready from the first film, but more on that later. So when they finally get to the research facility, they see that they found this alien organism. So they bring this unidentified alien creature back to their base, and they leave it in this room by itself, where it obviously begins to thaw out because it's in ice. So while all these characters, who have no names by the way, are all dancing and partying, it breaks out, and of course all hell breaks loose. So before I get any further, I'm going to make a point here. One of the issues that this movie has is that there's way too many characters, and only 3 or 4 of them actually do anything in this movie to progress the plot or even have a line. So when there's so many characters here in a horror movie like this, it's pretty much a given that they're here just to die. And this is one of the biggest things for me as far as I consider this movie where it begins to fail. Because a lot of these characters don't even speak English, meaning we can't identify with them in any way. And it's not just a language barrier, but it's hard for us to care about characters or their development or their plot or their death for anything if we can't even connect to them or relate to them in any way. So back to it. So of course when the alien breaks out, everybody goes on a search. This leads to someone dying and them lighting it on fire, as per usual for a Thing movie. Let me tell you about the rules of this creature first of all. So the Thing is a cell-based organism. Basically in layman's term, it eats you and then it copies you. And it can do this by any way of getting in your wound or just touching you. So this guy gets blood on his face, meaning at some point he should be taken over by the Thing and become some disgusting alien beast, right? More on that later. So later on during an autopsy, they discover that the man who was killed has a brace in his leg. The strange part being that the brace that was inside of his leg is now on the outside of his body. And this is actually a point I'll give to the movie. I thought that was clever. This is basically telling you that the alien organism can imitate organic material but not inorganic, so it can't do metal or tooth fillings or clothes for that matter. It's outside of his body, meaning that's kind of a way to test to see who's real or who's not. But as soon as they do something clever like that, they do something stupid, and like we get with this scene. So remember that guy who got blood on his face who should have been an alien by now? After giving points to this movie, they decide to give us this scene.
We'll be in the air in no time. Okay? Don't worry.
See, now when did that guy get infected? If we saw somebody get blood on their face and he should be an alien organism, why would they make it some random guy that we don't know be the infected one? When somebody's infected, it doesn't add up from what the movie tells us. In the original Thing, there was just this dog, and we had no idea what the issue was with this dog. But before it mutates or before we know it's an alien, we see that it has an interaction with pretty much everybody there at the lab. Whether it be a bite or a lick or off-screen time, pretty much open that anybody could be infected at this point. So after you find out that it's an alien and that it's a cell-based organism, you're thinking, wow, it really could be anyone, so who knows? You're in on the mystery. This movie just takes random people we don't know and decides, oh, okay, and they're also an alien. And this happens in twice within 15 minutes. So the plane crashes and it's safe to assume everyone's dead. So from here on out, Kate decides to realize that, oh, maybe not everybody's who they say they are. But then after that, 2 people come back from this helicopter crash. And you're thinking, well, obviously they must be aliens. But Kate, of course, for the sake of the plot, decides, no, they're fine, let's just test them. So they bring them back into the house. So of course they decide to do a test, but they can't do a blood test because that's too obvious to the original. So they decide, let's check everyone for tooth fillings because everyone at this lab apparently has cavities. And eventually, of course, the 2 pilots escape because they were left alone by themselves. Somebody has a flamethrower, then somebody gets shot, and then there's an explosion, and then nobody dies. But the reason why nobody dies is because apparently this guy was a thing, and then in like 5 minutes, like 4 or 3 people die. Like the black guy dies. I'm like, if he was just gonna die in this scene, why bring him back? From here on out, this movie basically just turns into a monster movie. So let's just skip ahead a few things. There's other stuff I want to talk about. So Kate burns up the thing monster, and of course there's still one other person who's a thing. They follow that thing to a ship where it plans to escape in its giant CGI ship. She's with the other pilot. Of course they split up as per usual, per horror cliche. And then Kate has a 1v1 with this monster. This scene drives me crazy because apparently the thing can't reach her, yet earlier in the movie we saw the thing break apart so it can get to different places. Anyway, she blows it up like the original one, and then she meets up with the pilot. But of course, she discovers that he's a thing, so she burns him up so that way she can just sit inside of a car and freeze to death. That's the end of the movie, except wait, there's more. There's a helicopter that goes back to the now burnt down and destroyed Norwegian science base place. And then there's apparently the entire time there was a Norwegian guy hiding, and he shoots at the helicopter guy, and a dog jumps out, and then he's like, that's no dog, and then they go chase after the dog, which leads directly into the beginning of the original Thing movie. And I kind of appreciate it. My problem with this is, when was there even a dog in this movie? It's almost as if they forgot, oh yeah, this has to tie in to the original one. Let's just throw this into the end credits. And once again, we're ending this movie on 2 characters that we basically don't know. So let me say this. This movie is basically guilty, in my opinion, of lazy writing. I'm not even gonna rip into the CGI because that wasn't even the filmmaker's fault. Apparently, if you look up in the behind the scenes, they actually did make puppets and animatronics. They just weren't allowed to use them because the studio didn't want to spend as much money on the project, which is really awful. I kind of like the little subtle differences in between this one and to the prequel. In this movie, the alien seems a bit more animalistic, it's rash, it makes really almost dumb decisions that basically get itself killed, while in the 82 one, since that's technically the sequel after this one, it seems to have learned from those instances and is a lot more subtle. The issue is that there's just no mystery in this one.